And this is Baruch Fleischman here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and we're going to go on with the stories from the Holy ARI. Let's see if we can get a little bit closer so that we got an idea of what's going on the other page. So he says, now, notwithstanding all these accomplishments of the ARI, Rabbi Chaim Vital was living in Damascus. Every night the master would remove Rabbi Chaim's soul from its earthly garment and hold discourse with him. In the morning, Rabbi Chaim would relate this to his disciples, because Rabbi Chaim was a tremendous Kabbalist in his own right. He had studied with the Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero. It's a very, very high level there in Tzfat. But here he's learning, he's living in Damascus. There is a learned Ashkenazi who would say to his disciples in Tzfat, and each night he holds discourse with my soul and urges me to come to him, that he may teach me the Torah. And since in his own view he held himself to be wiser than the master, he spoke almost with scorn, because this is the idea, is that, I heard this from Rabbi Yaakov Cronenberg, that the Ri was in 6 months in Tzfat before Rabbi Chaim Vital came, because of just what he say here. He considered himself to be a greater scholar than the Ari. The more so seeing that he had already written a commentary on the Zohar, so Rabbi Chaim Vital was on a high level. One day he found difficulty with a passage, and though he labored over it diligently, he yet failed to grasp the meaning. Still another day he found difficulty with the second passage, and again with the third, none of which he could understand. Now, remember, we're talking in other shiurim about Mocha the Godless and Mocha the Katnas. Bring this up a little bit. So he found himself not be able to get to Mocha the Godless about something he couldn't understand. Seeing how matters stood, he said, let me go to visit Tzfat. While there, I'll see whether the master is indeed equal to his repute. In other words, if he's really everybody says they're so great, but meanwhile, he's calling this Rabbi Chaim Vital's soul up to heaven every night. But this is where Rabbi Chaim Vital's attitude was. And on the day he came to Tzfat, he went to the master, who received him warmly and accorded him great honor. Rabbi Chaim Vital put to him the first difficult passage and explained it clearly. He consulted him regarding the second passage, and the master opened wide to him the gates of illumination. When it came to the third passage, the master said, this is the limit of your understanding. You're not worthy to delve further. Rabbi Chaim was as smart as a fox who stands before the lion. Crestfallen, he felt him and came to his house, took off his garments, and clothed himself in sackcloth, and sat all day and fasted, weeping and praying to God, that he might find grace and favor in the eyes of the master, so that he would accept him as a disciple. Now the next morning he returned to the master and approved him to take him as a disciple. So he implored him to make him a disciple. Then the master replied, by right, I should not accept you because you tarried all these 3 months before coming to me. So it wasn't 6 months, it was 3 months. He started talking to him in his dreams for 3 months. But your act of penance yesterday has been in your favor, so that I will, in fact, accept you and not hide anything from you. Whereas Rabbi Chaim prostrated himself when he heard that, and he says, before the Ari, and cried out, may the king live forever. He sat and studied together with the other scholars. However, he would always forget what he had learned until one day that master went with his disciples to Tveria and had him drink from what he called the well of Miriam. Thenceforth he retained whatever he would learn. Now some of the language in this is a little bit difficult to try to read it, try to get it together. It's because it's translated from the Ladino, which is really what the original language was of this, into Hebrew, and then from into Hebrew, then it's translated to us. So it gets a little bit clumsy in some of the idea, but what do we have here? Is that we understand that Rabbi Chaim Vital was somehow engaged in conversation from his home in Damascus every night as he slept with the ARI. This went on for 3 months. And one of the reasons why it went on is because he himself had a whole yeshiva with the disciples of people. It was only be about rabbis, be in yeshivas, and understand that a rabbi who's the head of a yeshiva, Rosh Yeshiva, has ideas of his own. And his politics is the way that he learned from his disciples, his rabbis as the disciples of others. So why should he go over to the ARI and get involved with him who's probably a much lesser light? But nonetheless, he's having these conversations. And then finally he gets into kashas that he can't handle. And so therefore he goes to the ARI for the answers, and this is the story. Now, it just happened one day as they were studying, so now we have Rabbi Chaim Vital learning with the Holy ARI. But the master turned and saw in a tree, he looked up, he saw in a tree 2 ravens with plucked feathers. He called out to them, "Evil ones, in this world you sought to destroy the entire people, and now in your distress you turn to me? Get you hence," in other words, get out of here. They fled in haste. The disciples, so the other students around the ARI, then asked, "What's the meaning of this?" He replied, "Know that these ravens, they come from the Bible names of Balak and Bilam, who were taken from one hell, which is Gehenna, to be placed in a more terrible hell. They came to beg of me for forgiveness for the humiliation that they had put upon me, that I pray in their behalf that they be saved from hell." That's the reason why I spoke to them like this. So let's read one more and let's see what it says. It happened one day that as they were studying, that the master said to his disciples, "I saw 2 bedizened she-demons." Now, this is the second time I've seen the word bedizened. I don't know this word. "Entering a room to defile 2 youths who were in it." Now, what does that mean? 2 she-demons entering a room to defile 2 youths who were in it. Now, what did he mean by this? He says that the she-demons, the idea of that is that if anyone, a man listening to this, has ever had a nocturnal emission, that you realize how real the feelings of that bring about the nocturnal emission, which we call carry. How strong the spirit is that makes this up. It's just a spirit, because as soon as the nocturnal emission happens, they're gone. There's nothing there. So he sees these two angels that are really, they're called she-demons. Now I had it in my power to save them. They were going to 2 young men. He said, "But inasmuch as they brought this on themselves by practicing witchcraft, I made no effort to save them. For thus said our sages of blessed memory." Now, let's just before we get into that, let's just try to understand what he said. He says that these 2 boys, these 2 men, were about to be defiled. In other words, they would have a nocturnal emission as a result of the spirit of these 2 she-angels coming, these 2 she-demons coming into them and enticing them into intercourse. Is basically intercourse without a female partner. But in so much as they brought this on themselves. Why? Why did this happen? Because they were attempting to practice witchcraft. What's witchcraft? It's working with demons. It's working with things that destroy. So therefore, he said, "I made no effort to save them. For thus said our sages of blessed memory, he who seeks to defile himself," in other words, you want to play with demons, "will find doors open to him." The disciples, on investigating the matter, found the master's words to be true indeed, that these young men were involved in witchcraft, and as a result of that, they were bringing these tremendously powerful sexual ideas into their lives. This is Baruch Fleischman. This has been the 4th year, the stories of the Holy ARI.